We're back on the build phase. I'm Mr. Ben, and today we are going to talk about the Fractured Family cards. So these were posted to Discord by, I think the Team Apex for the win Discord handle is Cell. I'm not sure if he took the pictures, so thank you to whoever originally took these pictures, but I think Cell is the one that I saw post these to Discord. So let's just dive right into it. So we're going to start here with Franklin Richards. Now the drawback here, we do have all the cards to look at, but I don't have the instruction book. So right away, we're going to run into something that I am not going to be able to answer some questions here. So he's a 2-5-6, not the most impressive stat line, but 6 health is definitely better than 5 on your MC. Multiversal adventures. You start the game with a multiverse adventure pile. During setup, after each player reveals their starting main character, you choose which of your multiverse adventure decks you'll use this game. Learn from grown-ups, level up 1. At the start of your main phase, if another main character is level 2 or higher, Franklin gains an XP. Okay, so that level up condition, while it is entirely under your opponent's control, most decks want to level up. There aren't many main characters that can win the game while staying level 1, so this is going to be a tough one for your opponent to play around, and eventually I think they're almost always going to give you your level up. Now, I don't know what a multiversal adventure deck is. My guess is that a multiverse that you build multiple decks for this character, and then you get to see what your opponent's main character is, and then you choose which of those decks. So, oh, they chose the aggro person, so I'm going to play the aggro deck. Oh, they chose the control person, so I'm going to play the control deck. But I'm not sure. Looking at his level 2, he becomes a 4-8-6. Those stats aren't awesome. I do like the 8. The 4 feels a little weak. Explore the multiverse. At the start of your build phase, Franklin may pay any power symbol. If he does, remove your deck KO pile in hand from the game. Choose a remaining deck from your multiverse adventure pile, shuffle it, and it becomes your new deck. Draw cards equal to how many were in your hand. So, based on the level 1 requiring you to choose a deck from this pile, I'm going to guess these are full 60 card decks. Uh, Maybe they're 230 card decks, and the idea is you have a first half of the game deck and then you switch to a second half of the game deck. Uh, I just have no way to evaluate this card without knowing what Explore the Multiverse means, without knowing what that multiversal deck pile is. So this seems like it could be cool if my speculation is correct, and you actually are able to build multiple decks, come to the game, see who your opponent's main character is, and then choose whichever of your decks is going to be most appropriate for that. That feels like an unbelievably powerful ability, but I don't know if that's correct. So I genuinely am not real sure what to think of this card at this point. Moving on to Human Torch, she is Fantastic Four and anti-registration affiliated. Uh, those are some good affiliations. There are a really strong plot twists for both of those teams. He has flight range 425. Those stats are not fantastic. Hothead, combat, pay a red. If this is your first attack this turn, Human Torch strikes the defender. So that, to a large degree, makes up for his terrible, terrible defense value. Having range helps. Obviously, you can throw him in the back, make use of that 4 attack while not exposing yourself to the weakness of your 2 defense. And of course, the hothead power sort of stops that gap as well. Like if you need to swing into somebody who has range, or you need him up front as a flying blocker of some kind, you get essentially a free attack. Hot Stuff, level up 3. When Human Torch solo attacks as your first attack each turn, he gains 1 XP. Uh, your opponent is going to be able to deny this to you, but it's going to take some work. Like they're going to have to get their whole board stunned out. They're going to stun out their main character. Um, it is possible though that you end up in a situation against a ranged main character who's up front and flies, and you just have to take 3 wounds in order to get that 3 XP, and that could potentially be pretty brutal. I don't think that's necessarily the most likely outcome, but it is something we should think about when we're talking about this main character. At level 2, he becomes a 7-5-5. That 5 health feels really problematic to me for how aggressive this guy wants to be. Retains flight and range, gains hothead, or retains hothead, and is able to stun somebody when he attacks, which, I mean, yeah, that's good. You get to strike for a free 7, and maybe you don't get hit back, but man, that's going to get expensive if you're relying on that for the whole game. And 5 wounds, 5 health is not a lot. He also gains Hottest Guy in the Galaxy. You can pay 2 blue, 2 space, or a blue and a space. For the rest of the game, when Human Torch enters melee combat with an enemy character, put 2 -1 counters on it for each time he's used this power this game. So these abilities that all of a sudden Super Awesome Games is all about, where we have to pay 2, 3, 4, 8 power symbols. The flexibility here is kind of cool, so you're never going to get hosed behind, oh, I drew one of each of the locations that I needed. But this guy, he needs blues, he needs spaces, he needs reds. This is a location hungry main character. If you're able to use this superpower a couple times though, and you're giving -4 every time you declare an attack, that kind of offsets how bad his defense is because you're going to be constantly chipping away at your opponent's ability to strike back. It feels like this might work, especially given some of the plot twists that you have access to with the Civil War team, facilitating additional draw, as well as how strong the combat pumps are, both on Civil War and then that Fantastic Four plot twist. So there's a lot going on with these team affiliations that I think make this character look a little stronger than he would if he didn't have access to 2 teams worth of plot twists. Seems very playable. Invisible Woman. Now, I think everybody's sick of Sue Storm to some degree, given how strong the original Fantastic Four affiliated main character was, but let's see what this one does. So she's at level 1, Fantastic Four and anti-registration. All the same stuff I said about access to plot twists and whatnot is applicable here. She's a 2/5/5, not my favorite stat line. She has flight, and do I look like I need protecting? Any combat, pay a green. If Invisible Woman is defending and in the front row, she can't be struck. Reminiscent of Defender's Luke Cage. Hiding with the Resistance, level up 5. When a Fantastic Four or anti-registration supporting character appears on your side, you may hide it. If you do, Invisible Woman gains XP equal to its cost. So that level up condition is more or less entirely under your control, although it does silo you pretty heavily into a couple of teams. And some of the cards like Fantastic Four, you might not want to hide somebody. Like if you're playing Herbie down on turn 2, like it's kind of a bummer to have to like that's not where his value is going to come from, is hiding. But you do that to earn your level up condition, and let's see what it gets you. A whole bunch more of these double power symbol powers. That's what it gets you. All right, so she becomes a 4/8/5. Not the best stats. Not super impressed with these really low attack, high defense stat values on our level 2s here, but she does have flight, so a flying 8 defender does mean you're going to have the ability to set up some stuff in the back row potentially. Do I look like I need protecting? Any combat, pay a green, same as it is at level 1, she can't be struck if she's defending in the front row. Create a wall of force. Main phase, pay 2 blue, 2 earth, or a blue and an earth, and Invisible Woman if she's in your front row. Place the Wall of Force terrain token into your back row. If you already have one, replace it with a new one. So we're going to skip ahead to look at the Wall of Force terrain token. Placement, back row, it affects all characters, and characters in this row cannot be attacked. So this is basically a 3 health Herbie. So somebody has to crash into this 3 times in order to get it out of the way to give them access to your back row again. And as soon as they do, you can refresh it with a couple more earths or lab locations. That's really annoying, especially if you got a bunch of ranged guys in the back row who are giving you good utility. Wyatt Wingfoot is on team and a fantastic card for digging into your deck, finding these extra answers, funding the never-ending wall of force. His seems pretty playable. His seems pretty playable. Mr. Fantastic. He is Fantastic Four and Pro registration affiliated, so a lot of the same stuff applies. Both Pro and anti registration teams have really good card draw cards. I think I originally predicted that the anti registration ones would end up being more powerful, but I found use for both of them. The card draw, they have good combat tricks, and of course the Fantastic Four, everything I said before applies here. So this is another character that is likely really going to benefit from having those 2 team affiliations in the upper right hand corner. He is a 246. There's so many good things to say about the main characters that we've looked at so far, but these stat blocks feel really like 2016 to me, like 246. Oh man. Okay, stretch your mind. Mr. Fantastic creates an invention. Oh, great. So this is like a Doctor Doom. This is a turn one way to invent stuff, and it doesn't rely on yellows. It lets you do it with reds. I like that a ton. Inventions are already unbelievably strong. This is just another way to get to them super quick. Volunteer to register. Level up 30. That doesn't seem good. When you recruit a character that doesn't have Swarm, Mr. Fantastic gains 1 XP for each letter in its card title. I have I have no idea how to evaluate this level of condition. I've never thought about the game in terms of the number of letters contained within card titles, so I don't know what your curve would have to look like to really like build towards this. I'm not sure if you would even have to build towards it, or if just the general naming convention in the game allows you to get to that 30 by like 3 or 4. That feels early to me. That feels like a lot of characters, but again, I've never thought of like Mr. Fantastic. I guess there's not an early game version of him, but that's like a third of the way there just on that one character. So is that typical? Uh, I will say this: it's a level of condition that's entirely under your control. You can definitely play towards this by choosing. And does it specifically say letters? Yeah. So like a character like Herbie that has the periods, I don't think it's just counting characters. I think it's not also counting characters. It's just counting letters, and it can't have swarm. I, I don't know. One of the math wizards is going to have to tell me what his average level up is going to be, or I'm going to have to be able to play with it. That's a weird level up condition. Uh, and it's another where you're going to need like a D20 or something off to the side to keep track of it. So once you get leveled up, he keeps the dual affiliation, which again, those are really good plot twist kits on both of those teams. He becomes a 5/7/6, I guess. He can still invent, which is great. And then he has another one of these 3 ways to pay for a double power symbol superpower. So this is build phase, yellow, yellow, space, space, or yellow space. Remove a supporting character in your hand from the game, then clone it. The clone gains lethal, and at the start of your next turn, remove the clone from the game. So this is going to let you essentially do like Bishop in the Aliens box, where instead of having to pay a recruit cost, you pay a couple of power symbols. So this could get you out an 8 drop on turn 8 along with an 8 drop that you pay for on turn 8, which is a really big board swing. And it has lethal. So this could clean up something really problematic on the board, as well as allowing you a chance to like double drop 2 fatties at the end of the game. Uh, all these cards, all the Fantastic Four cards so far seem promising. Uh, Based on past experience, though, let's see what Thing is going to do to us, or demand from us, maybe is more appropriate. So Fantastic Four and ProReg affiliated 3, 4, 6. Yeah, all these stat blocks feel tiny to me. Maybe it's because I've just been looking at so many photo cards recently, and the last few photo sets have felt real pushed. So maybe coming back down to earth. I don't know. All these MCs feel a little weak on the stat block, but good words otherwise. We've got people to protect! Exclamation point. Any combat, pay red. If another character in Thing's row is defending, remove it from the combat and move it to your back row. Thing becomes the defender. Uh, that is better than the Fantastic Four affiliated Things version of the same thing. I think the one he had before is you had to pay for it, and then next turn they had to attack him. This giving you the ability to pay and get value at the same time, and not put your opponent on notice that you're trying to get that value. You could sneak this out of your. Yeah, this is way, way, way better. Still probably not great. I mean, it's basically an uncanny defense for a red. Could be, but only 4 defense. Uh, don't you see what you're doing? Level up 5. When when a combat starts that doesn't include Thing, he gains 1 XP. If all characters in the combat are good, he gains 2 XP instead. I kind of see the theme they were going for there. Checking out of the country. When Thing levels up, remove him from the game with all his counters, and at the end of your next turn, put him onto your side. So just for leveling up, he basically heals a wound, so to speak. If you're in a position where you're vulnerable, where your opponent could push through a wound, just all of a sudden now they can't because your guy's out of play. Okay, I can see that. Level 2, he's a 666. Now this is straight up like a Defenders era level 2 stat block. We got people to protect, so I think this is going to be the same. Yeah, that's pretty much the same as the level 1. And then it's clobbering time, but in some other language. Il est temps de batter. Batter. 2 green, 2 earth, or a green and an earth. You can say it's clobbering time in any language. If you do, put 10+1 counters on Thing. So this is hard countered by the gentleman. Watch out. Gentleman meta OP incoming. So he can become a 16/16. +1 counters are a little fragile nowadays. There's a lot of ways to clear them up, but you're going to do this and you're probably going to push through a nice juicy attack before your opponent even has a chance to try to deal with that. And if they don't have something that's like clean and easy, like a Sonic Disruptor or whatever, then if they're trying to deal with 16/16, honestly, you're probably going to get a 2-for-1. But considering you have to invest 2 locations into it, I mean, it is an expensive power, and it does something that's a little more fried. You know, you compare this to the Human Torch's power, where he gets a thing that locks in for the rest of the game, and it stacks. Thing out of the Marvel's first family here, I think his is the most fragile of the double superpower things. It could still possibly work, um, all these characters look kind of interesting, but man, those level 2 powers, they are expensive, and you gotta have card draw to support it. So maybe with the dual affiliations they get away with it. They just seem like they're gonna get so beat up in the early game. All those guys' early game stats are kind of rough. Okay, moving on to Uatu. So this is a Fantastic Four affiliated 057 with flight. Absolutely hate that stat block. I do not like main characters with 0 attack. Not a great starting place, but Portal to Alternate Realities. Your deck may only include Marvel cards, but it may include Marvel cards from the photographic universe. This is very cool. This is going to open up combos that we haven't thought about before, but it is limited to Marvel cards, so you're not going to be able to get some of like the real gross spice. Like you're not going to be able to get Gunman because of this, because that's not Marvel. Oath of Non-Interference. Uatu can't be in your front row, can't attack, and can't strike. So you can't even block with it. Like 5 defense and a flyer on your level 1, you might be able to start setting up support characters in the back row behind that kind of defense. But he can't be in the front row. When an enemy player plays a card, he gains an XP. He needs 10 of them. Uh, your opponent does not have to give you that experience very quickly. But you've got 7 health, so in all likelihood, you probably will level up. Let's see what he gets. He becomes a 10/10. That's a very good stat line. He still has the Oath of Non-Interference, but if you can get an Earth and a Space, then he loses the Oath of Non-Interference for the rest of the game, and your main character is now a 10/10/7 flyer that you can put in the front row, can attack, and can strike. The payoff is there. Like that's big. You only need the space and earth one time, and then you're set, which means it's not gonna be that hard to find the locations that he needs. Uh, it does feel like your opponents might try to stall you out by not playing plot twists and kind of opting to play on curve rather than dumping under. Like your opponent is going to have some control over this level up, but man, that payoff is so big. And if you present enough threats in terms of supporting characters that you're playing out, they're going to have to play stuff to deal with your threats. And if they choose not to, well, then you win without leveling up. And that feels pretty cool too. Moving on to Brainstorm. This is a 2-cost Fantastic Four affiliated 1/1/1. Pretty bad stats for a 2-drop. aka Valeria Richards. Smartest girl in existence. Build phase, pay yellow. Draw cards until you have as many cards in your hand as the number of characters on all sides. This is absolutely gonna be abusable. This is gonna play right into the pro registration of dual affiliated MCs who have access to the card that lets them draw 3 cards in order to, if they have more characters in play, draw those cards, play those cards out, use Brainstorm, draw up a bunch more cards. The thing is, a single -1 counter is going to kill this thing. She is very vulnerable. She's going to be difficult to protect. Uh, I guess a flying 10-10 like Uatu might be able to do it. And the part of the game where it's going to be such a hard balance to time this right because you're going to need to be able to build that board. But if you vomit everything out to the board, you end up with nothing in your grip. And now you're vulnerable for your opponent to chip all this stuff down. So you build a nice big board, and then your opponent destroys it, and that was the turn you wanted to play Brainstorm, and now you can't. The timing of getting the board out there and then getting her into play and being able to, I guess if you're behind, this could be a comeback mechanic. If your opponent has a really wide board, you could draw a ton of cards here. Uh, I definitely think this card has use, but it's not going to be generally useful. There's going to be specific moments in games where if you can say this in a 3-drop on turn 5 and totally refill your hand in an aggro deck where it's going to allow you to pull ahead. But I think if you try to force this, there's going to be moments where it's going to sputter. And if your opponent knows that you're on this, they may opt to not push to be even more like you don't go for the win more. You hold a few things back in your hand. Like I only need to win the board by a little bit, and then that denies you a lot of value here. And even as you're trying to rebuild, maybe you draw a few cards off this, but as you're trying to play them out and take control of the board, well, I still have resources in hand, and I can still smother your stuff as you develop it. So I think this is going to be a skill testing card. I think this card is gonna, this is gonna see play. Absolutely. Human Torch, 3-drop. Uh, so I guess it's worth pointing out that this is going to accelerate the level up condition of like Mr. Fantastic, yeah? Because before we had to go 4, 5, 6, and now we're going to be able to get Human Torch. Well, I guess unless we have a thing and a Sue that are less than 6, we're still kind of in the same place with him. But anyway, Human Torch, anti-registration affiliated, 5-3-1 with flight and range. Just based on stats, that's pretty solid. Like for a 3-drop, that's pretty solid. If this is your first attack, he can strike the defender. So you can declare an attack with him, pay a red, and get a stun where you might have gotten clipped back, and instead now you don't. Now you do have to commit him to the attack, but it's almost like you could think of the red as like gain a health. Uh, so if he's a 5-3-2 with flight and range, that's pretty good. I mean, it's not quite as good as say Primeval, but it's in Primeval territory. There's some things about this that almost, yeah, because the flight's right there. You don't have to pay to get the stealth like you do with Primeval. But yeah, it's pretty good. Whoa. I do not like this artwork. What is wrong with Franklin's face? Holy smokes. That is unsettling. It's like he's like a child, but somebody put like Nixon's face on him. So weird. Okay, anyway, he's a 4 cost 291. That 9 is a pretty big number on defense for a 4-drop, although he more than pays for it with his terrible attack value. He's AKA Franklin Richards and Universal Shaper. Build phase, pay a blue, shuffle each card in your resource row into its owner's deck. Put that many cards from the top of your deck into your resource row face down, then turn any number of your face down locations face up. This is gonna see play. This is gonna see play. Uh, there's gonna be misses where you've got 5 locations in your row, you've used all of them, you cycle them back in, and you get 5 characters. Like that's gonna happen to somebody. But there's also gonna be times where you're gonna get 3 extra locations all at once that like this is just pure gas. You've got the characters in play already that you can spend stuff on to outlet these locations. This gives you a reset on your row. I don't think this is going to go into every deck. This is certainly an anti-tempo play. Like if you're trying to be really aggressive, this is not the card you want to use to try to refill your gas tank in an aggro deck. But in those like long, slow, grindy control games where you just need one more superpower activation, this guy, he's not anywhere near as good as Monarch, obviously, but he's kind of in that same class of card. Like this is a resource extender. This is gonna, in the best case scenario, let you take 5, 6, 7 cards that were locations that you flip face down, throw them back in your deck, and get 5, 6, 7 locations back out, and then use that many more superpowers. Um, it is slow though. This is a slow card. And taking a turn to do this, especially if you miss, it is a gamble. And if you miss, then you might be in big trouble. All right, thing, 5 cost thing. Oh yeah, so this right here is going Mr. Fantastic a turn earlier, potentially. Well, you still can't play him and Sue on the same turn. Uh, 553. That's a much more reasonable stat block than the previous thing. Clobber. When thing stuns a defender, move it to its back row, and it can't ready or move its next turn. Um, I think I might be out on this guy. 5-5 just doesn't quite feel good. Like it has to stun, but he's going to be fighting down. Um, I would almost rather have saw him with like a 7-3 stat line or something like that, so that he could fight up a little bit or even. I mean, there's like yeah, yeah. Well, we already have a fantastic thing supporting character. I don't think this one competes with the one we already have. Although there is some value in hit a guy and freeze him next turn. So he's not like bad, but I just feel like these stats just kind of aren't doing it for me throughout this whole box. Like there's a lot of good words on these cards, and the numbers aren't as awesome. Okay, 6 cost Mr. Fantastic, pro registration affiliated, 552. 6 cost 5-5. Come on. Stretch your mind, build, pay a red. Mr. Fantastic creates an invention. I mean, I guess that's pretty good. That is really good. Stretch your body when Mr. Fantastic enters combat, double his attack and defense. Okay, so that I can deal with. So he's got a printed 5-5, but anytime he enters combat, he's going to become a 10-10, and he can invent on turn 6. 2 health, that feels awesome. This guy's totally acceptable, even though he's a printed 5-5. Thing, on the other hand, I don't feel like his words make up for his 5-5. Invisible Woman, 6 cost. This is anti-registration affiliated flyer 591. Invisible. She doesn't protect characters and can attack protected characters, and then she has the ability to create the wall of force. I feel like the main character. I don't remember what her level up condition was again. Um, you gain XP equal to cost. Yeah, so the main character is going to be able to get to this effect faster, probably, than the 6 drop. Uh, it's depending upon how dependent your deck is on keeping your back row supporting characters alive. Maybe this is an effect you want. Like this could be pretty good in that she is going to be hard for your opponent to like deal with because she's not protecting anybody. Big or two different thoughts there. 9 defense on turn 6 isn't the best, but like you're gonna need to commit something to it. She's not a total pushover. The flying isn't gonna help her defend the back row stuff, so you really are relying on the wall of force to defend all that stuff. Um, I think if you want this effect, you're probably using the main character. I don't know that I put this in my deck just for the wall of force. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, 7 cost, Fantastic Four affiliated Doctor Doom, flight range 962. I don't like the 9-6 very much, but flight range, 2 health. Build, pay a yellow, Doctor Doom creates 2 Fantastic Four affiliated inventions. That is very good. The only drawback might be that by turn 7, if you've got like Mr. Fantastic as your main character, you might not have that many Fantastic Four affiliated inventions left. You might have already gone for some of them. But the Fantastic Four have decent inventions. So yeah, this seems pretty good. 8 cost, Defenders affiliated Silver Surfer, flight range 5-15-3. That's a wild defense number. Finally, a stat that I'm not making fun of, although 5 attack on an 8 drop. Power Cosmic, any combat, pay a space or an earth, stun a supporting character in the combat with cost 7 or less, or stun a main character in the combat with level 2 or less. So there are going to be some supporting characters that get away from this. There's going to be a small number of main characters that get away from this, but overall, this is Pay a location, stun a dude. He's got a big butt and a ton of health, so he's probably going to stick around for a while. Yeah, if you can fit room in your deck for these locations, that's probably a playable 8 drop. Uh, I can't say I'm crazy about him having only 5 attack to work with in the games where you don't get the space and earths, but 15 defense, especially again, there's sort of a theme here where if you can get support guys in the back, Wyatt Wingfoot's on team, you get set up with those characters hanging out in the back where your opponent can't get to him, and this guy's definitely a blocker. Fantastic! Exclamation point. This requires 4 Fantastic Four affiliated characters. That's kind of outrageous. Put 4 +1 counters on a character in the combat. Any combat, put 4 plus. So that when we've seen loyalty plot twists before, and they asked you to have 3 characters in play, the majority of those didn't see play because getting those characters in versus, unless you're already kind of winning, in which case this becomes a win more card and I care a lot less about it. Unless you're like, you're not generally having a board that's going to be 4, 5, even 3 characters big. Like if both players are doing their decks are doing the things that you want them to do, most of the time you've got maybe the worst guy that you had from last turn, your main character, and maybe the best guy you can play this turn. So if you're going to play this plot twist, you're going to have to commit to lower cost characters in your deck. There's going to have to be turns where you underdrop in order to get this might makes right effect without having to pay a green for it. Might makes right is an excellent plot twist, and people have warped their decks around fitting it and the greens to pay for it into their decks for years at this point. So I don't think we can count this plot twist out, but the thing that it's asking you to do is almost be Fantastic Four loyalty to make sure that you're going to be able to build the board. And now you can kind of get away with that because there's so many of these dual affiliated so you get the Fantastic Four guys, but you also have access to these really powerful plot twists from the Civil War teams. So I could see this scene play, but I think if your main character isn't Fantastic Four, you can't play this. You just can't play it. Uh, which I think was probably, yeah, I mean, that's the Fantastic Four. So we now have a machine equipment portal to prison. This is pro registration affiliated invention. You get one of them. Negative zone prison. When a defending enemy character gets stunned, remove it from the game. So this prison gives all the characters that you control super lethal. When you stun something, you don't just KO it, you RFG it. Yeah, if you can get this online, that's pretty disgusting. So just a reminder, anybody can invent this pro registration affiliated equipment, but in order to play it, you have to have a pro registration affiliated character in play. I guess the 7 cost Doctor Doom couldn't invent it because he can only invent Fantastic Four affiliations, but you know what I mean. Okay, Psycho History. This is a plot twist invention, pro registration affiliated. Reed Richards looks like he's being just downright insufferable in the card art. Predict destructive scenario. Main phase. Make a secret prediction where you name a character. The next time a supporting character with that name would appear on an enemy side, reveal your prediction and put that character into its owner's KO pile instead. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't think it's gonna save you from Dark Phoenix though, because the whole ruling about how her power triggers on recruit and not appear. So the like number one place where I immediately want to use this, it's not gonna be usable there. But there's plenty of other like if you know your opponent, you have information about your opponent's hand, either through a meta read or through like peeking at it using one of the many tools we have to peek at the opponent's hand. You can really make some predictions about what their Omega is or what their big bomb at the top of their turn. I don't think you want to use this early in the game, although stopping like a key uh, like a Frank Drake when you know your opponent. That's their only way to get an invention, like something like that. Getting that kind of thing stopped early potentially, but I don't think that's where this card would shine. I think this card's going to shine by nuking your opponent's fatties at the end of their top of their curve. And we already talked about Wall of Force. So overall, Fractured Family, I think it brings a lot of interesting things to some like fan favorite teams that I'm really happy to see revisited. Uh, Fantastic Four and to a similar degree, Civil War battles all kind of got like maybe a little bit of short shrift in terms of like attention and fanfare given when they released and all the things that were going on in the world. Like the Fantastic Four centric cosmic format got absolutely steamrolled by what happened with COVID and never really got the attention it deserved. So it's cool to see these COVID era teams getting some extra juice, a little bit of adrenaline shot into the veins. There's a lot here that I like. It does feel like the stat blocks on these cards feel super tiny. On a lot of them. Maybe that's just because I've been spending so much time in the photographic universe recently that I'm sort of velocitized to expecting higher stat blocks. Uh, but if this is a set where they're leaning more heavily into wild powers that do really strong things, and the part of the way the characters pay for that is by investing value from their stats into those powers, I'm also cool with exploring that design space along with super awesome games. I feel, generally speaking, pretty positively about this box, and I'm looking forward to getting it. Although, honestly, it's going to be a while before I sleeve up anything that doesn't involve the boys. So I may not have actual hands-on data with these cards for quite a while. All right, that's the fractured family box. Looking at all the cards again. Thanks to Cell for posting those, and thanks to whoever originally took those pictures. If it wasn't Cell, I'm Mr. Ben. Go win some games.